Good. Thank you for coming. I see a lot of familiar faces, but tell me who is here for the first time at SAIS? Oh, good. Wonderful. I used to work at SAIS for the past 6 years, and I'm still a fellow here at FPI. And it's always amazing how when we do an event with photography or art, it brings in lots of new people in different communities. So I'm glad to see that here today. So in addition to being part of FPI, I'm the president of the American Pakistan Foundation, and we're co-hosting the event today with FPI. So I just wanted to thank both of our teams for their support. And I thought what I would do is, before talking about the event, I just want to share a little bit of information on the American Pakistan Foundation, which we call APF, just because it's not relatively known in DC. 10 years ago, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and the late Ambassador Richard Holbrooke believed that the Pakistani American community had a lot to offer, their current homeland and the one they left. And as an advisor to both of them at the time, I was asked to help foster the creation of an organization that would empower communities in both countries, and with a focus on development and exchanges and education. And so APF was created. And in the past 10 years of its existence, APF has focused its work on both having impact in Pakistan while also trying to serve US-based communities. And so I'm proud to say that after this decade of evolution and growth, that we've landed at a very interesting place. And I wanted to share that with you today because we have a lot of exciting things happening. The mission is to empower the community, all communities, but starting with the Pakistani American community, and then also to build bridges between the United States and Pakistan, which is something that we all recognize is critical just for good foreign policy and for good cultural relations. So we have 3 programs that reinforce this. One is a fellows program. Every summer we send a small cohort of Americans, mostly Pakistani Americans, to Pakistan for 2 months. They work in international development-focused NGO. So these are young Americans of Pakistani descent who get to go out into rural villages and meet ordinary Pakistanis who have really basic needs. And usually they're going to Pakistan to attend a family's wedding. So it's a really transformative experience for them. And we hope to grow that program. The other initiative we have is a United Nations initiative, and we have a special consultative status up there. So essentially we're an NGO at the UN, and it's offering us a chance to have a platform to talk about Pakistan's development needs. And that's a new initiative, and we're going to build that out. So we're looking forward to working with other NGOs working on Pakistan. And then finally, this is so exciting, the most exciting one, I think, we're developing an internship and mentorship portal. So similar to LinkedIn, APF will have its own portal where you can go in and put your own profile as a mentor or as a mentee, and then you can be linked up with other successful folks in the community. And while our target audience is the Pakistani American community, we hope to make this available to everyone. And so be on the lookout for that. So you can see from our 3 initiatives, the 3 signature initiatives, that we have one kind of central feature, and that's of youth. And that's why today's event is so important, because this is a story of a family and a baby boy that they adopted, but it's also about all these other young children in Pakistan who are underserved and whose stories don't get shared or heard. And so today is an effort to kind of highlight that and shed some wisdom and guidance on an issue that's really closeted. And we know that one program can't solve everything, but we want to do our part, so that's why we're doing it. And we're having it at SAIS because there's so much overlap with development. I'm sure that some people saw the invitation and thought, why are you doing something on adoption at SAIS? It's an international affairs school. But as you'll see, there's a lot of overlap. So let me now introduce our guests very briefly, and then we'll start the program. Kashif Javed is a DC-based photographer. He was born and raised in Karachi. He turned to photography to express himself in ways that words cannot, and he'll talk more about that today. He's interested in telling stories that are personal and kept tucked away due to societal pressure. He lives in Virginia with his wife, Faiza Javed, who's right here sitting next to me. She has a bachelor's degree in social work and works for Fairfax County Department of Family Services. So as they got married, they started to talk about having a family, and they dealt with the issue of infertility. And so we'll talk about that. And it eventually led them to consider adoption. And it took Faiza a while to be convinced of that. And eventually they adopted their son Haris from an orphanage in Karachi, and he is now 13 years old. So today they'll tell their story in their words and through images. And then we're going to have a discussion about this, which I will moderate. And Kulsum Khan from the Global Fund for Children, where she works on programs in Asia, will join us for that conversation. And she's done some really important work on child welfare and child protection. And she's also on the APF Leadership Council, so we're very happy to have her here today. So first, we'll go to Faiza, who is going to read a very important letter. I'll let you explain what that is. And then after Faiza speaks, Kashif will give a presentation of his photography, and we'll have the panel discussion. And finally, I'm going to stop talking, I promise. This is such a special event because I randomly met Faiza and Kashif at some other photography event, and I kind of saw them from the back of the room. I'm like, those two look like Pakistani Americans. I'm going to go talk to them. In my new job, I have to know all of them. So, and it was just a random meeting, and we were gathering over photography, not over Pakistan. And then I learned of their story. I saw Kashif's work, which is beautiful. And he, by the way, he does all this other work that is just street photography, and it's really awesome. And one thing led to another, and that's why we're here today. So this is really the beginning of a conversation that's unexpected, and I'm sure it will lead to other unexpected and good things. So I just want to give both of them really, I'm just really happy, and I want to give you the credit you deserve for opening up this conversation, which is not easy. So with that, thank you. Faiza, please take the stage.
Thank you so much, Shamaila, for giving us this opportunity. I will just read the letter, and I would let the letter tell you our story that became the inspiration for Kashif to do this project, Karachi Kid. So I wrote this letter this past Mother's Day in 2019, and I shared it on my social media, which was very courageous for me because I am not a social media person. I keep my feelings towards myself, but this was something I really wanted to do. So the letter goes, today, after a lot of thinking and gathering the courage, I'm writing this letter to the mother I will always be grateful to. Today, we all are celebrating International Mother's Day, and I want to write a thank you letter to the mother who made me a mother. Yes, this letter is to the biological mother of my son. He's turning 13 soon, and I'm so thankful to the mother I know nothing about, but still feel so close to. Every year around my son's birthday, I pray for her health and mental peace. I want you to know your sacrifice was not wasted. Our son is the most precious person in his parents' lives. Without any doubt, believe me, that part of your body is now a part of my soul. I didn't carry him for 9 months in my tummy, but I did carry him in my heart way before he came into our lives. He was in my heart when I went through laparoscopies in hope of getting cyst-free so I can conceive him. He was in my heart when I went through laparotomy in hope of getting pregnant right away. He was in my heart when I went through unsuccessful IVF cycles, and every time my husband will give me a shot in my tummy with trembling hands. He was in my heart the first time I heard the word infertility, and I knew I will become a mother one day. He was in my heart when my husband was trying to convince me to adopt, and as a mother, I was already protecting him, thinking, what if others do not accept him? And it took me 2 years to realize that no matter what the world will think, he will be mine. I have no idea about what you went through all this time. I don't even know if you're aware that you gave birth to a beautiful child, our son. Sometimes I wonder about his facial expressions, if he resembles you in any way, or if he acts in a certain way that he inherited from you. Trust me, I'm so grateful of you, and all I want you to know how much he's loved, not just by his parents, but everyone around him. His grandparents from both sides, his aunts and uncles, his cousins, his nieces and nephews. Our son is exactly the child I always dreamt of, a boy, one mischievous, full of naughtiness, but also caring and generous. He loves me a lot, but I love him more. Sometimes when he's sad, I wonder if he's thinking about you. Yes, he knows that you gave him birth. You kept him in your tummy, and I kept him in my heart. I totally understand and respect if he thinks about you. He is a part of you, and this makes me realize that how beautiful it is to share this bond with you. It is so difficult for a mother to share her son with anyone. Even sometimes it is hard to share the child with the father. Yes, I do feel left out when my son plays with his father and our whole house gets so loud with their screams while playing Ticklebugs, a tickling game they invented. But I am willing to share him with you for the rest of my life, as I know I am a mother because of you. And there is no way I can take away your motherhood and your relationship with our son. Happy Mother's Day. Always your grateful. Thank you.
All right, so before I start sharing the photos with you guys, I just wanted to take a minute and thank some key people who made this happen. So Shamila, thank you so much. Obviously APF, John Hopkins, and the photography community that I belong to. So especially the Nova Community College, my teachers there, Photoville in New York, focus on this story in DC. So photography is a community that I belong to, so I just wanted to mention that there are people in the background that have always supported me. And let's begin. So this is in Southern Bolton Market, which is in Karachi. I don't know how many people are here who know Karachi or are from Karachi. So 13 years ago, we adopted Haris. We went here. This is as you can see here, kind of blurry. This is Mr. Adi, the man behind the foundation, Adi Foundation. He has now passed away. His wife, Bilkis Adi, is still alive. So I got to Karachi. It was late at night, and I was already anxious to kind of get there. So in the morning, we get there, and the next photo is going to take you guys into this building right here. So we're going to look at the steps that goes to first level floor, which is where Bilkis Adi and her staff is. And then this is the first floor. On the second floor, that's where the infants and toddlers are. So just want to take a moment and talk about this. Both Faiza and I looked at this photo and decided that it should be the first photo in this deck. Reason being, I think this represents the world as it exists, happiness, sadness. These are the steps that a mother would take to depart from her newborn as the baby is dropped in this baby cot. And it's a reduction in assumptions to say a mother is the one who drops the baby here. Of course, the baby could have been dropped by uncle or father or whoever, right? I mean, so anyways, this is where the baby departs from his or her mother. And then on the other hand, we looked at these steps as steps of joy. These are the steps that we climbed and went there to become parents. So it's the juxtaposition. It's the sorrow of someone who's becoming joy of someone else. There will be photos that I'm not gonna really get into. It's for you guys to just look at and just decide for yourself. Just keep an. Oops. So when I'm gonna talk about women issues and burqa, just keep in mind that Pakistan has upper echelon, obviously, like many other countries, and then the lower class and the middle class. This whole project focuses on lower and middle class. Just keep that in mind, please. So I'll translate that real quick for you guys. What it says is, AD baby cot. You committed one sin, don't commit another. Leave the baby here. life belongs to Allah, signed Bilqis Edi. So as you can see, this is a very huge assumption which says you've committed one sin already. So I'll talk about that later, and I think we're going to get into that when we discuss as a panel. This is second floor, and this tent is something Faiz and I have bought this for, obviously, for Haris. I think he went through like 2 of them, if not 3. Then we bought it for our niece, other kids in the family. So I had to take twice like that for the kids when I went to visit them. So we built the tent, and as you would see, there were other things that we built too, and we just had a good time. These kids have disabilities, so this is happening on the left-hand side, and the kids are on the right-hand side. And these kids, I don't know what kind of disability they had, but they were not mobile. But as you can see, there's joy on their faces. They're smiling, they're laughing. So I'm a firm believer that emotions are very strong. If you're happy, you're going to make other people happy. If you're pissed off, you're going to piss other people off. Here, these are the kids that I was playing with. Same thing here. You know, this is a train track that I've built with Haris, with other kids in the family. So we just had a good time. I focused on not to sympathize with them or view them or touch them in a way that, you know, hints or indicates that I'm sympathizing with them. So I was there to hang out with them, do things that I do with Haris. That was my plan. On the last day when I visited them, I got on my knees and I was hugging this kid. He was standing, I was on my knees, so we were kind of on each other's level. And I had emotions, and all of a sudden, this little guy came in, and she kind of wrapped us around. So I felt like 2 hands touching my body, and I looked, and I'm like, whoa, you know. So like I said before, I was the one who was hugging this kid, and then in return, I got a free hug from another kid. So it was very emotional to depart, to leave them there. And this is on test day. They were having a math test, and believe me when I say this kid knows his multiplication tables. I mean, this kid kept on going. I have other photos that are unfortunately not here today due to limited time. But after he finished 2, he started with 3, finished that. So they are getting education even in an orphanage. So, you know, it's a very hopeful situation. What happens in later with their lives is a big question. One of the things that I've picked up from photography and just you know, from practicing yoga is the concept of namaste. And what photography has helped me do is to realize that, you know, yes, a photo is made out of light. I mean, you guys must have heard it. Anyone who's into photography knows that it's about light. But the way I view my photography is when I take someone's photo, I'm seeing the divine in them, and hopefully they'll see that in me. And they were all watching Charlie Chaplin over there, and I had my camera ready, and he just turned around, he just looked at me. So it's recognition beyond explanation, or at least I cannot explain it. I mean, you know, you make eye contact, and it's a big handshake. It's like a visual handshake that I see you, you see me. Now, this is in Korangi. So is this place, by the way. So when I was here, all these photos up till here were in southern Karachi, which is kind of like a downtown. But when we moved to these set of photos, these are in Korangi, which is at a different location in city. And primarily, this is not for toddlers or infants. Older boys are there. Girls are located somewhere else. And basically, most of the boys here are either missing or lost. And you know, that's a great definition of orphanage or orphans. I sat next to him. I mean, he was crying, and Karachi was really weird around that time because of the rain and everything else. There were just flies all over the place. There's a fly there, a bunch of flies on his legs. I think I swallowed one fly, I think. So flies were all over the place, but it has nothing to do with, poor conditions in the orphanage. I just wanted to make sure I explained that. The whole city was infested by flies during that month. So I honestly didn't know if I should hug him or ask him something, but I just kind of sat next to him because on that day, I had not made a visual connection with the boys. I wasn't sure if I am viewed as a friendly or somebody who's not going to harm them. So I kept my distance. I just sat there, took this photo. A few minutes later, his friends show up and they're playing. So, it's, I don't know. I don't have anything else to say about this. Again, they're playing. You can see the intensity on his face. So I've always viewed children as equal. Yes, we have our own kids, but all kids are our kids in a way, right? I mean, we enjoy these board games with our kids, and unfortunately, they don't have parents, but they have each other. This is pretty cool because, like I said, I wanted to play with them like I play with Harris, and since they were watching Charlie Chaplin, they were already in this mode where, we don't do this kind of stuff anymore. No one watches Tom and Jerry where, they're kicking each other's butt or whatever, right? So they were pretty serious, and I said, hey, who called me Baldy? And one kid who was right in front of me, he looked at me, he's like, no, I didn't. Then I looked in some distance, there's this other boy who had a smile on his face. I said, did you call me Baldy? And he's like, maybe I did. And I said, I'm gonna tickle you. So I kind of chased him, and it was on. I mean, we got so loud in there that administration had problems with it. They're like, shh, keep it down. This one teacher said, hey, you guys are disrespecting our guests. I said, please, no, I'm the one who's starting this, so please. As the song goes, hey teacher, leave the kids alone, right? So this yo-yo is something that I've played with for a long time. I don't know all the names of the tricks, but I've learned tricks, and so has Harris. And I shared it with them. And this boy was pretty good at it. And as you can see, he's probably not seen a yo-yo before, so he's pretty amazed by it. Another photo of other kids trying yo-yo. So in here, I wanted to give them cameras for them to take photos. I kind of showed them where the shutter is. Most of them knew. As soon as they had cameras in their hands, they were gone. Most of them were gone, and they went into rooms or elsewhere. Only a few kids hung around me, and they had questions like, what does this dial do, and what does this do? So, photographers in the making. And as you can see, he loves photography so much, he's taking photos even after the cameras had gone away. I think it lasted for about 10 minutes as we were told by administration, hey, don't let kids go in rooms and take photos or whatnot. So, and, I am the big brother. So they're going towards the prayer hall, and it's prayer time. I like this photo because his finger, this is a process or a step in the prayer, in the Islamic prayer, which is, I believe it means I bear witness. So, I spoke with him after he was done with his prayer, and I said, hey, what did you ask Allah for? And he said, I asked for forgiveness. And I wanted to right away ask him, forgiveness for what? What have you done, little homie? But I didn't. I mean, I wasn't there to really probe or dig deeper than go there and play with them. But I kept quiet, and after a pause, I asked him, I said, come on, man, there must be more. You must have asked for something. So he said, yeah, I asked Allah to send me back home. He's been there for a month. All right, so these next set of photos are pretty intense. Unfortunately, I was under the impression that I'll be able to see notes, but anyways, I'm gonna wing it. This guy, Dr. Shaud, is a community doctor. He's been a doctor for a long time. And what he has done, being a community doctor, he has become kind of a social worker too. In the past, he has helped 6 families or 6 girls deliver babies. And when I talk about 6 girls, obviously they're not married, so they got pregnant outside of wedlock. Big issue. When I asked him, I said, how was that process? And he said it was really hurtful from 2 different perspectives. One was the girls were in a straight up denial. How can I be pregnant? And then the families will just be in shock, and they'll end the session there. They'll just go back home. And he said all of those 6 families came back within a few weeks. And it was very obvious that the girls were beaten in a manner that, the pregnancy will end on its own. One girl, he said, had bleeding, which was almost life-threatening. So it was 100% obvious that she was beaten at home in a way that the fetus will just kind of, to kill the baby, basically. So the other dimension of his stress that he mentioned was to move the girls. In Pakistan, a pregnant girl is not accepted if there's no, if the father is unknown. So families don't accept it, brothers and fathers don't accept it, neighbors will ruin your life, you'll be bashed, your family will be bashed. So technically culture doesn't allow it. So he would have to arrange for housing for the girl until she delivers, and then he will coordinate adoption with parents who are looking to adopt. And what he did is pretty amazing. He actually checked on the babies as they were growing in with their adoptive families. One thing he mentioned to me is people due to infertility, this is in Pakistan only, so we're not talking international. He said in Pakistan, they do adopt, but they fail to really give equal love to an adopted kid as they would have to their birth child. So I think the conversation with him was for about more than an hour, but that's the gist of it that I got by meeting him. We had interesting conversations. There's much that needs to change in our culture. Moving on, this is interesting. I interviewed a OBGYN at Taj Medical, which is in downtown. She refused to be photographed, and I kind of smiled because where she was sitting right behind her was this. You can't see down there because the chairs are blocking it, but for those who speak Urdu, it says, Ya Allah Madad, and I'll translate it. It says, Oh Allah, help. So the conversation with her was it messed me up for a day. The things that I heard, such as one girl, she said, came in, she had blood all over her pants or dress. When she looked at her, her intestines were hanging from her vagina because she was taken to a illegal clinic where an untrained professional literally put her hand in there and pulled out the fetus, and the intestines came out with it. And I have these on voice recording, so I am gonna work on a blog and a book eventually. So this will be a part of that. She also told me a case where a girl came in with family and her brother was very aggravated, hostile towards the girl. And he said, if she's pregnant, I need to know if she's pregnant because I'll kill her right now. So the doctor, being crafty, because you have to be that in Pakistan, she showed the brother somebody else's medical reports and said, look, your sister is not pregnant, she has fibroids, so they're very big fibroids. So she just BS'd a Pakistani male. It's easy to BS Pakistani males, trust me. So that baby was delivered prematurely because of the brother saying, I'm gonna kill her. Because she was scared that her tummy is gonna get so big that her brother is gonna get on her case. Also, she told me that in the lower class, it's very common to have 10, 11 kids because children are a source of income. Boys of age of 10 and above are a source of income. Girls also make money, but less than boys because boys can work on the street. Girls only work as maids in other people's homes. All right, this guy was pretty interesting. Fahim Siddiqui, he's the bureau chief for GEO, which is a national news television channel. I sat down with him for about 2 hours. His phone never stops ringing. It's either army, rangers, politicians, powerful people who are either saying, why the hell you're not showing my content? Or they're saying, why the hell you're showing this? This is anti-Islam. This is anti-Pakistan. So I don't know how he does it, but he does it. So I asked him, I said, has there been a boy or a girl who was once adopted, now adult, who came to you guys and said, hey, I need help. I need media to broadcast my ask. I want to know who my mother is, and the orphanage has no records because I was left in a baby cot. And he said, no, that has never happened. And I said, has there ever been a mother who came regretting that, I was forced by my family to give up my kid and I don't care about them anymore, I want my baby back? And he said, even if she wants, she cannot, because the society will haunt her, basically, because it would be a bad character kind of accusation towards her. He said that they tried to run campaigns where contraception was brought to people's attention, and there was a big lash out that this is anti-Islam. So a basic thing that I also talked with the OBGYN and the other doctor, men, especially husbands, they don't like to use condoms because they want full satisfaction, I was told. And interestingly, I was also told that they would use condoms when they're engaging with other women because they want to protect themselves from diseases. But he told me that condoms, when they're trying to promote the education about contraception that men can use, they throw Islam card at the media, and it said, hey, don't do this, this is un-Islamic, we don't want to do this. So I think without my notes, that's all I remember right now, but very interesting conversations with him. So I stopped this guy on the street. The more I was indoors, I was itching to be outdoors because I was away from Karachi for 13 years and I love his street photography. So I stopped him because I saw that he has a baby. So he has 2 daughters, and I asked him, I said, have you ever thought about family planning? He said, yes, as soon as Allah will give me a boy, I will start thinking about family planning. So I crave sandals like these ever since I was a free-range boy in Pakistan. I've been going to different parts of the city. So I interviewed this guy. I went there to buy a pair of sandals, but I interviewed him. There he is again with a guy who has migrated from the rural area to Karachi. I had interesting conversations. They both agreed that education is very important. Even if they can't afford private schooling, public schooling, they were in favor of. Same thing, I went to another part of the city to buy different kind of sandals. Not these, but another type. All right, this kid here is an interesting dude. I saw him from a distance when I was talking to this guy. And I went and talked to his uncle. Well, I didn't know he was his uncle, but I started talking to them. And basically, his father is a drug addict, and his mother brings the income which the father uses for his drugs. So he's in trouble right now. He's running away from his school constantly. He's running away from home constantly. This is his uncle who is trying to protect him because he's concerned that he's also going to start using drugs. And as we were talking, I swear to God, he was gone. When I looked back, he was not there. He even left his slippers. He was gone. So yeah, this dude is Karachi Kid, definitely. Before I stopped him to talk to him, I had to talk to other people around him. On the other side of the street, I was like, hey man, is this guy mentally stable? Can I approach him? And they're like, oh yeah. He's just working in this warehouse over there, and it has to do with coal, so he looks like he's psycho, but he's not. So I spoke with him. I spoke with these guys. They all work together. And these are day laborers. They have families because they said, you know what is life if you don't have a family, if you don't have a wife? But I can't, they all said that, we can't afford a living. We go day by day. Our housing situation is bad. So, it's a bad situation. This guy was visiting them, and he had similar stories to share that, there's no job security. It's just hard for lower class to make money. His name is Ramji. Jobless for a long time, but he's still sending his kids to school, so education is a priority. So now I moved to AD Orphanage, which is outside Karachi in Mawaj Goat. And then I spoke with this guy. He's the big chief there, or has been. Now he's old, he has heart disease, and his heart disease treatment is right there, medicine. So those of us who have parents who are heart patients, what kind of rigor and good treatment they go through. This is all he has. So I talked to him, and I said, hey, is infanticide is still happening? And he gave me some information on it. And then this guy showed up. He is his son, and he is educated. He completed 8th grade. There's a pen in his pocket, which is pretty cool. He was able to read my business card. So I asked him to show me around. So he took me for a tour, or to just look at the graves of children or infants who were thrown either in trash, died there, or were brought to orphanages in a bad condition and died there. So I wanted to show you guys this. This is all an unknown infant gets, right? And if you guys have seen photos of Jesus, right, with the thorns around his forehead, I mean, I just found it very, very interesting how all these thorny bushes are around it. So a grave with a tombstone of an unknown infant and a grave of a known person, you can see the difference. So a big issue in Pakistan is a state of denial. Oh, no one is killing babies. So he showed me around, and he said on a monthly basis there are about 20 to 25 graves for unknown infants that are dug up, and infants are buried there. So this is it. You can see the difference between a proper grave and a grave that an unknown infant gets in Pakistan. All these are graves, he said. He said if there is bushery or shrubbery around it, it's because no one is there to take care of them. And most of these graves wash away when it rains. So I asked him a similar question. I said, has anyone ever come to you guys saying, hey, made a mistake, threw the baby in trash, killed it, whatever, and I'm repenting, I'm regretting now? And both the father and his son said, look, we've been in this graveyard for more than 10 years now. No one ever came. And then his son all of a sudden remembered. He's like, no, one time this one girl came. And she was crying, and she gave us the month and the date range. Like, this would be the time when a baby girl would have come to be buried here. So based on that information, they said during those date ranges, 3 graves were made. So that girl decided to pay for and got all of those 3 graves paved and turned into a proper grave. So one of this grave was her daughter. And here's a tombstone of her daughter's grave. As we were leaving the graveyard, I mean, it was a heavy feeling. But I wanted to go back here and tell you a little bit about Pakistani culture. This vehicle you see here, about 6 guys came out of it, plain clothes, AK-47s in all of their hands, and they're like, why are you here? Why are you taking photos? What's going on? So it's a tough place. If you want to explore these type of situations in Pakistan, it's not easy. Turns out they were with the army. I really wanted to ask them, I said, where's your uniform? Are you off today? Why are you messing with me? But we don't get to do all that in Pakistan. But you have to know how to deal with people, because everyone is going to stop you. Everyone is going to question, why are you asking? Why are you here? So that's a big deal. All right, so next photos are just street photography. I call this 6-pack. They don't have water to drink. Here's a kid, child labor. And here's a family on a bike, and I was pretty surprised to see this. I was like, oh my God, there's one more little boy or girl in there. And, I did not have contact with women. We're going to talk about that. Shamila, I kind of cheated with this photo. It should not be in the deck, but it is. Here's a family feeding baby on the go. And this is me with some other Karachi kids. We've never met. None of us had ever met each other, but you know what? We're all Karachi kids. We had a good time, and cheers to that. And this is the end.
Thank you, Kashif. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, my mic fell off, so just making sure it's well. So thank you for that. This is, you titled the project Karachi Kid, but really it's more than just about children. There's multiple family members, multiple layers of society and bureaucracy that are involved in that. And so I commend you for taking on a very challenging project, and also just for telling your story, which is a deeply personal one. So my first question is actually to Faiza. Talk about why you needed to be convinced to adopt, and then also you needed to be convinced to start talking about this story.
Right. Again, I was born and raised in Pakistan. So as Kashif said, we have this, I'm not judging anyone, but this is what my experience is. People in Asian and South Asian countries, we are very judgmental. We like to say, okay, if this person is not doing what the normal of the society is, they are doing something wrong. So when we decided, or Kashif started talking about adoption, I was like, I was raised in that culture. I know even the girls, I was not allowed to go out in the recess while boys were playing on the streets. So that culture where even girls are not allowed to do anything, how would that culture, even though I was in America, but obviously my family were still in Pakistan. So I was like, how are they going to accept my adopted child? Because adoption is still a taboo in Pakistan. An adopted kid is a product of sin. So that took me some time to accept that, okay, we are willing to adopt, and tell that everyone that we are okay, we are parents, and you need to accept him as our child.
Yeah. And how long did you have to wait for the process to
Actually,
conclude?
when you say like when there's a will, there's a way. Yeah. So as soon as we decided, things just went like one by one by one. And thanks to my sister and my brother-in-law, they were ready to become the godparents for Haris. So when we got the call from AD Center, they were there in Karachi, and they took care of Haris for a whole 1 week before we went there.
And just for some context for the audience, the AB Foundation is one of the most active humanitarian organizations in Pakistan. It's run by the late Abdul Sattar AB, founded it with his wife Bilqis AB, who still is alive. And not only do they do humanitarian work, they do a lot of social welfare, health services, and then orphanages as well. And as we alluded to, infanticide is an issue in Pakistan, and I believe it is particularly high in Karachi, where the foundation is active.
Right.
And so
the largest ambulance network
in the ambulance network. Yeah, absolutely.
in the world.
And no,
And
he's
they even came here for Katrina, and they tried to help people in New Orleans.
that's wonderful. But I think that their focus on orphanages and offering these services has actually helped address this infanticide.
Definitely. And to
issue.
answer your question, we started the process in November. That was the first time we attended an adoptive seminar. And Haris was born in May 2006. So that's when we became. So from November to May, that's what the process took from here in America and Pakistan.
And Kulsum, let's talk about it from the programmatic side, because clearly these, sorry, the mic is making a lot of noise for all of us. I just wanted to see if we can fix it. On the programming side, this is a very challenging set of issues to deal with, because there's social issues, cultural, religious, And so there's a lot of intersection. So how do you begin to actually tackle this? And AB Foundation clearly is tackling a part of it, but talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So actually, let me speak a little bit about empathy and why empathy is important in program design, and why beyond program design it's an important skill to learn as human beings to actually have societies change and to address some of these very difficult issues. I mean, coming from a program design space, social change has been led historically by people, maybe not easy, but a lot of other people that have the means to create organizations and to lead change from a different perspective. Whereas a lot of the work that they've done actually impacts a very different population that is socioeconomically marginalized. And that's understandable because the nonprofit sector is still a very non-traditional and risky place to be in if you want to make a decent living and if you want to actually support a family. But the solutions are almost always geared towards the marginalized communities. So what we end up having are people that are creating solutions to problems that do not directly affect them. And we all have a perception of this problem. We all have a perception of the problem that we want to fix. But to fix that and to create a solution, we have to go beyond that, our own perceptions. And that requires you to walk in somebody else's shoes. Another part of this is also mindset shift, where we're talking about shifting people's mindsets. And empathy is an important part of that as well, because let's say we want people in a certain community to start looking at the power of girls' education. And unless we understand their mindset, unless we understand why they behave in a certain specific way, the chances of us modifying their behavior is going to be very low. And I guess from the more individual perspective, and this kind of goes back to a little bit of like the stigma or like where we come from as individuals as well. You were talking about your background in Karachi and growing up with certain mindsets. I think for young people to grow up as change-making youth and adults, which is really important in our world, empathy is an applied skill as important as learning, reading, and math. And I'll give you an example of something that I saw recently last year. I was privy to a Facebook conversation between a couple of people that I knew in Pakistan growing up. And it was around the increasing number of beggars in Lahore, which is my hometown. And one of my contacts felt overwhelmed and hounded by the number of beggars on the street. So she said, what can I do beyond giving them money, because this is becoming unsustainable for me? And a lot of the solutions focused on, well, you could put windows, you could put like curtains on your windows, you can give out packets of biscuits and food, or you could avoid eye contact. Wow. And this is in no way to shame people who don't know how to react in certain very difficult circumstances, but it does bring the importance of empathy for me, because why wouldn't we want to look at this from the perspective of the people that are most affected? Asking questions like, who are they? Where do they live? What are their social circumstances? Why are they being forced to actually go outside, risk their lives, and beg for a living? What is being done by the government and the nonprofit sector? And then what can you do to support them from that perspective that is outside of your comfort zone? So as observers of people's issues, we tend to see the symptoms of the problems and not the root problems. And I think empathy pushes you to look at the root problems as well. You mentioned intersectionality, so I can kind of get into that really quickly as well. So intersectionality is for a lot of people, I mean, if you know, it's overlapping oppressions that people who are part of multiple marginalized groups experience. And so in Pakistan, if you are a woman of a minority religion from a socioeconomically disadvantaged background, and you are likely to come across different challenges than, let's say, a woman who is coming from a middle-income family from the Punjabi Sunni sect, and you are trying to achieve the same goal, you are going to come across different challenges in your life. So when we design programs around girls and technology or youth entrepreneurship or livelihoods development, we have to ask, like, who are these benefiting? Who are these meant to benefit? And are they really helping the beneficiaries get out of these multiple layers of oppression to access the services that nonprofits are providing? And I mean, intersectionality is a buzzword. So, but I think for solutions to be scalable and for them to actually have sustainable impact, we really have to look at the constituents of the programs, who are the solutions benefiting, and then really amplifying their voices.
That's interesting, and it makes me want to ask Kashif, when you were on your trip, which was, by the way, just in August, right?
Yes.
This is very recent work. Did you observe empathy amongst the people that you interviewed on the services side?
Yes, however, they were of very firm belief that this is the cutoff date. After this, abortion cannot happen. So I don't know why Islam has to get into it. Oh no, if it's after 4 months, then no. Before it, yes. The OBGYN I spoke with, and I put her on the spot, I asked her, I said, it seems like you're pro-life, but why make a decision for someone else? If a woman is coming to you, you should respect that. And she actually gave me a story, and the thing is, it's weird for me to really assess it being a male in America. So realities are different there. She said one woman did not wanted her baby, so she convinced her not to abort. And what she did instead is she said, look, I know couples who are looking to adopt, so I'll help you get rid of the baby as soon as the baby is born. When the baby was born, the mother changed her mind. She said, you know what, how can I give her away? I'm going to keep my baby. So I think there's empathy, but it's a little bit hijacked by culture. So it has a limit to it. Mm-hmm. It stops at a certain distance. Mm-hmm. However, when I was hanging out with my friends at night or whatever, and then again, I am there from America. I have dollars, they don't. These people are approaching you while you're eating, they're asking. So for an American to continue eating while there are 4 or 5 kids looking at you like, help me. And I gave them money, and then my friend said, you'll see what you just started. About 20, 25 kids, women, men, all sorts of people just crowded us looking for money, So it's a very complex situation in Pakistan with homelessness, joblessness.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to respond? You look like you're... Yeah.
I agree with that. I think that empathy starts when you are a child. I think it's something that you cultivate with children along with the same time that you are teaching them other skills in life. But at the same time, I do realize that it's a topic that applies more to the middle income and upper income class, where it's a lot easier to talk about empathy for people. And it's a different conversation when you're talking to a child in an orphanage to have empathy for somebody else that may be eating chicken tikka boti outside, and doing things that maybe there is a very different conversation that you're having. But I think that social change really does happen when more people are able to get out of their comfort zone and look at whether that's religiously out of their comfort zone or it's culturally out of their comfort zone, and that's when you start looking at the root problems.
I think what's really challenging about this topic is that it's not just one policy that can be fixed to improve the situation. There's many layers to it, and a lot of it is rooted in social change and then linked to religious perspectives and practices as well. So it's a very ambitious project that you've undertaken, actually, to open up a conversation about an issue that there's no quick fix, obviously. So one final question, then we'll open it up to the audience. So Kashif, then why photography? Why through photography are you trying to tackle this very complex issue? Why not another way?
So to be honest, even before this project, what photography has done for me as an adult, you can call it midlife crisis, but photography really allows me to be a Karachi Kid again, which means I get to play unsupervised. I get to do what I want to do. There's no time limit or whatever on me. I'm on my own. And for this project, I think I wanted to, I wanted to get close to people. And photography allows that. If I walk into somebody's space, especially in Pakistan, it's not that easy. But when you have a camera and you tell them that, hey, I'm here to kind of expand on what I'm doing, and you show them photos that you have taken in the past, you show them photos of your family, they open up to you. And it was very important to me to use photography to express things like Adi, when he was alive, he would say things like, humanity is, no religion is more than humanity, or something to that effect, he said. And there's a reason behind why he said that. He was constantly under threat because a lot of fundamentalists believe that by putting baby cots, he is promoting product of sin, because there's this assumption that these kids are born out of sin or prostitution or whatnot. So no one really wants to look into the fact that maybe the girl was raped by the father or an uncle or teacher, right? So it's a big hush-hush Iron Curtain subject, which was hard for me to approach from a pen or from a podcast. So talking to the people on the street and using photography for it really helped me express of what is the burden of the lower class citizenry. And you saw that in the last few photos. I mean, six packs, I'm making a joke out of it, but you know, the lower class people, they don't even have drinking water. They have to go to these filtration plants where they have to go get water from. You know, a mother is feeding a child while the husband is riding a bike. Where are they going? Who knows? Maybe they're going to drop the baby at a daycare and both have to go to work. A family on a bike. So the situation is pretty bad. And for me to do it with photography was the only way I knew how to do it.
I lied. I have one more question. So this is for Faiza. There's somebody not here. Haris is not here tonight. And tell us how you are talking to him about sharing his story.
We have been telling about adoption. We have been talking about adoption since he was a baby, like adoption stories, adoption. When we went to Pakistan, what we did, I made up a song when he was only 2-3 months old. I still sing to him, and he's like, "Please don't."
He's like, "Mom, stop."
So we have been talking. So it's not as difficult as we would just sit down and talk about it one day. So we have been talking about him. First, we were thinking of bringing him here, but as an adult, or as adults, we are ready to share the story. He's only 13 years old, so we don't want to pressurize him or make him uncomfortable that, okay, you have to come with us and share your story, because he would grow up and he would share his story when it's his time, or if he wants to, or if he doesn't want to. That's totally up to him, but we just want to be honest. He knew that we are doing this project, and he was excited and he was happy for us, but he's not ready yet to share.
And if I can add something real quick. So he has been involved with the Karachi Kid project all along. I asked him, I said, "Hey man, which camera should I take that you think the kids will like?" Obviously, as a photographer, I have boom, 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 boom cameras at disposal.
Even he helped us. Sorry, we forgot the sequence, so I called him. Can you please check the sequence and send the picture? So he did that.
He was looking at photos when I was sequencing last week, and he's like, "Don't use this one. Use this one." Or you know, when I was buying these toys, I would call him and say, "Hey, do you think I should buy this or this?" And he's like, "Oh, get that one." So he knew all along why I was going there and what I was going to do. And in April, all three of us are going to go back to Pakistan.
That's wonderful. So one of the reasons I love this story, there's lots of reasons, but one of them was because it's actually a story about building bridges, and it's adoption and development, but really building bridges, because there's this couple on the stage that's telling a story about their family and of adoption, which is a universal topic. I think anyone in any country, anywhere, can relate to this issue. And it reminds me a lot of the adoption industry as it existed in the United States in the 50s and the 60s, and it's gone through a rapid evolution. It's not that long ago.
Right, and I'm sure they had this taboo too back then. So people are changing here. So hopefully one day Pakistan will change too. And that's what we are here for, to change the mindsets of people.
Right, and to open up a conversation.
Exactly.
And I've never been to a conversation like this in Washington ever, and linking it to so many other bigger issues I think is really interesting, and we hope that we can keep opening it up and looking at different angles of it. So,
and it's not easy to sit here and talk about it, because even though there's this world out there, right? I mean, we just became family with one kid, but all these kids, what about them? But when you think of it from our perspective, our personal space, our personal family, it's not easy because it's just not done. But I think we owe it to the new generation, regardless of Karachi Kid or Hong Kong Kid or Mumbai Kid, whoever. I think it's time that we need to start encouraging each other instead of using our imaginary friends to encourage each other.
Wonderful. All right, so let's open it up to questions from the audience, and we have mic runners. And just introduce yourself. And, all right, we've got Nadia over here in the front.
You know everyone by name.
I try. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I mean, I know it was so personal, but I mean, I want to know about your speaking tour and your book, and I wish there were more people here who I'd brought for this, so thank you. I have a lot of questions, but first I'd love to know more about the process, because I live in Pakistan. I've been there for 8 years. I didn't know you could do this.
Okay.
And then there's all sorts of religious kind of things that are raised around it, so I didn't even think it was allowed. So I'd love to know more about that. I had a question about what does happen to the kids later, because you mentioned that. I've been to the girls' orphanage for the older girls, and the destination for them is kind of to settle them into a marriage, besides skills and vocational. But I wonder like how those experiences have gone, if you know anything about that. And then a bit about the issues of class, and if you've encountered that in this process, especially with like maybe extended family or whatever in Pakistan, because that's one of the most striking and disturbing things that I've encountered living in Pakistan.
Days after coming back to America, I'm at work and everyone is congratulating me. This Pakistani dude comes up. He's like, "What did you name your son?" And I said, "Haris." "What name you gave him? What's his last name?" I said, "What do you mean, Javed?" He's like, "No, you cannot do it in Islam." I said, "You know what I can do with this?" So it was a very nasty conversation, and then I had to kind of do the Michael Jackson moonwalk backtrack out of it. I was like, oh my God, I've been threatening him for the last 30 seconds. Because, you know, I wasn't raised with religion. My father raised us with empathy. Every time I had a injured kitten, injured bird, he always helped it. So the reason I'm saying it is because there's humanity in everyone. You don't have to use the religious card on being good or whatever. If you want to do good, do good. That's my personal opinion, but going back to your question, it hurt. It really hurt me when he said that. And I have needle phobia, but after 7 years, I got this tattoo, Abu Haris. And I was like, you know what? If there's an imaginary friend up there, he's going to see it, that I am his father. So I think we need to fight back. It needs to stop. It's bullying. Just by you saying Allah or Muhammad and then just abuse people, it needs to stop. That's my personal take on it. And I'll let Faiza speak more because she already said shut up.
No, I didn't say that. This is what I love about these two.
She's a bully.
No, but you barely started your presentation. She was telling you to shut up from the audience.
Yeah, see?
I like her. You guys don't need me up here.
We did adoption 13 years ago, so I'm sure the process has changed. But again, it starts from here that you have to go to them. You have to attend adoption seminars, get to a adoption agency and start the paperwork. So they come, they do the, what is it called? They home study, and then you file your application to immigration. Once they approve it, then you can do the process in Pakistan. But you have to work here for the immigration first. Yeah.
But there's no process in Pakistan. You're definitely on your own with a lot of help from a lot of people, I have to say. Even though I talk about, you know, the culture, the people, one thing about Pakistanis, they're like magnets, man. You need help, they will help you. So things happen. You know, you can talk to a friend who knows a friend who knows someone there.
That's what happened with us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We have a question. We can take two. So first you, and then we can just take both of them at the same time and then go back to the panel.
Hi. My question is kind of still an idea that I'm bouncing around with, so I hope it makes sense and we can talk it through. We talking about empathy over here, right? And then over here, like I remember like early on, there was this thing that came up of like religion and how it can sometimes block, right, empathy. I'm in the public administration, right, field. I'm working in nonprofit, but I also noticed that sometimes just policies and procedures within an organization, especially in the nonprofit sector, also becomes like a barrier to that empathy.
Definitely.
Because, oh no, the numbers look like this, right? Oh, we need
yes.
to meet this, which I understand because there's limited resources, but how do we keep that empathy alive even within the administrative world sometimes?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, and then this gentleman up front. No, just for for the recording, please.
Yeah, my name is Mujahid Ali. I just wanted to ask a question. You mentioned that you guys are going to take Haris to Pakistan, and he's 13 years old. Have you taken him before, or this will be the first time?
That will be the first time. He will be almost 14 by the time we go next year.
14. So I was going to ask another thing. Are you going to, like, maybe you have mentioned it to him that his mother, like you adopted him and he has his mother there. So did he talk to you about that he wanted to see his...
No.
Okay.
No.
That-
Actually, why don't you take it?
No, say what you have to say.
I think what we have done is we've kept information age appropriate, and we've kept our answers or feedback based on what he's asking. He hasn't asked. Part of me wanted to do this project because I know Mr. Adi is gone. Bilkis Adi, obviously, she's also her years on earth are numbered. Unfortunately, she's already sick. So I had this thought about what if he wants to know tomorrow. That's why I did all this. I talked to Fahim. I said, hey, what if someone comes? And he said, no. When I was leaving, I did tell him, I said, hey, if anyone asks me in America that I was adopted from Pakistan and wants to know something about their mother, I'm sending that kid to you. And he smiled. He said, yeah, we'll see what we can do. So that's what I meant when I said, Pakistanis will always help you out. So, I mean, it's up to his own curiosity. We don't exploit or explore it with him, but he knows everything.
And maybe you answer.
Sure. To answer my new friend's question, she's from Malala Foundation, so there's a reason that question is coming up too. So just thinking about empathy in the system, in the grant making and capacity development system, I think you would see a lot of, there's a trend in constituent voice. So getting feedback from people that are most affected by your work is becoming something that a lot of people are talking about and doing it proactively. So the Global Fund for Children where I work, what we are trying to do is engage our constituents, which are the nonprofits, and learning from them about what is working for them and not working for them. And what we want to do is for them to create feedback mechanisms with their constituents, who are usually children and youth, to engage them in program design and development, have them on their board and advisory councils, so that what doesn't happen is that there is one executive director who is creating programs and organizations and implementing it in a community that doesn't necessarily need those programs or doesn't have a voice in it. So you will find, for example, with GFC, the Global Fund for Children, again, we have a Youth Leadership Council that is engaging the children that our partners are working with in giving us feedback on what we should be doing better. We have a well-being program in our organization and also at Ashoka, which is another big nonprofit, that is really looking at how do you ensure that people that are working in this space are being taken care of, sometimes on the front lines in very difficult situations as activists, or even here in the nonprofit sector working 12-hour days. So, I mean, there are different programs that are popping up. It definitely needs to have more of kind of like pickup from other spaces as well. But I think that is still very promising in that empathy is becoming something that people are talking about a lot more.
Kulsum also used to run programming at Ashoka, and with a focus on Pakistan too.
Yes,
right?
I spent some time trying to launch our office in Pakistan for about 1.5 years, so I have some good insights on the social entrepreneurship space there.
Wonderful. We have a question up in the middle, Sahar.
So my question is for you, since
Introduce yourself.
Sahar Khan, I'm with the Cato Institute. So I was just curious, since of course you are part of the diaspora community here, and when you adopted Haris 13 years ago, what were your friends' reactions? Because you live here, so we know perhaps how Pakistan or how people in Pakistan react, but how did your community here react? Do you know other couples who have adopted? Or sort of what was the process of talking about adoption here while you're living here?
Obviously here, our coworkers, our friends, our neighbors, they were really happy. They were more welcoming. But again, from our families, the first question was, you wouldn't know the biological mother. You wouldn't know what kind of blood that baby will be carrying. You wouldn't know what kind of bad diseases that baby will be carrying. So again, we had so many like negative vibes from people, from our culture, from our families. But again, they were family members who were really helping us. Like my sister and my brother-in-law took the custody for Haris for a week, and they took care of him while we were going there. So again, there are people, good and bad happen. So we had the negative and positive experiences, but at the end, it's totally worth it.
And in order to defend Pakistanis, I have to say this. Dr. Shahood said something very important to me. He said that as Pakistanis, when we meet others, we really love to ask questions that will hurt that person. We have lost that insight as to what should be asked and what should not be asked. So, like Faiza said, that was the experience, and I really have started questioning it. I'm very vocal about it in my own space. I've burned many bridges because of it. But my question to Pakistani community is, what is it that is bringing this to your mindset? Who is telling you? Is it your religion, your culture, your old elders, the books you're reading, the shows you're watching? Where are you getting this impression, and why are you not questioning it? Right? But when we adopted, my childhood friends in Bahadrabad where we lived, they all looked at him and they're like, man, he's like your kid. When we came back, our neighbor here, she's like, Faiza, are you sure Kashif didn't go back to Karachi 9 months ago? They're like, he looks like you. So we had a lot of support and good feedback from both Pakistani side and American side.
It's a great question. Okay, let's take all three questions at once, one after the other. So
I don't have that good memory.
Farida, I do.
Mine's not a question, so it should be bothering you. Mine is just to clarify a few things. I've been on both sides of this adoption thing. I was 4 years into my marriage, and I still wasn't pregnant, and I wanted to adopt. And my mother definitely put her foot down. She says, no way. Like you say, you don't know whose blood will be carrying. You don't want just anybody's child and everything. But she said, just ask Allah. So I asked Allah, and I landed up with 3 kids of my own, so that's good. But I've also helped a friend of mine adopt 2 kids from AD. And I've gone through the whole process with her, the social worker and coming into the home. And I've written my guarantees and everything for it. So it's been I still see those children now, and I'm very happy when I see them. And they've sort of, and Bilqis Saidi has a fantastic system where when you are asked to adopt a child, she will ask you for a photograph of yourself. And she tries to find you a child who looks like you. So people don't question it as soon as they see the child, they say, oh, it's not your child. But the child will look like their parents. And it's a very nice system that she has. And the other thing I'm going to clarify, Islam for you, you're allowed to adopt. The Prophet adopted as well. So if anybody say you can't, tell them you can. Absolutely, 100%. Because there is a story in the Quran that says that his adopted son gets married to a girl called Zainab, and they don't get along. And they want to get divorced. And the Prophet is very scared. He said, what would people say that, a marriage I helped fix is not working? And they said, it doesn't matter. It's not working, it doesn't work. But this is where the story of his adopted son comes in. So you can adopt. And the 4 months thing, it is in the Quran. It says 4 months because according to the Quran, it says that when a child is at the age of 4 months is when the soul comes into the child. So after the soul is coming, you shouldn't abort, but you can abort before.
Yeah.
That is my clarification. If there's any other question about Islam, I'm here.
Well,
Thank you. You want to respond?
Yeah. Just to respond, I believe it's 23, 33, and 23, 34, because since you mentioned Zainab, Muhammad did marry Zainab.
He doesn't marry her.
Yes. So,
Your adopted son is not your own son. You could marry.
so why? Why is your adopted son not your son?
But that again, also it comes, it is saying that your adopted children call them by their father's name.
But if the father is not known, then what? And I'll tell you this, in Pakistan...
Whatever it is, nothing is written in stone. You must understand that. I mean, we do evolve.
No, it was brought up, so I'm just...
No, yeah, but I'm telling you what, as it is there, and it's not something I'm making up. But I mean, I don't agree with most.
See,
So
Pakistanis...
I think what we need is another session.
Mm-hmm.
On it.
Yes.
So let's hold.
That's over you and me. I can talk.
Yeah, let's go. And I'm glad that you commented on it because I'm not going to comment on what the Quran says. All right, Sabah, please. Yeah.
This is, hi, I'm Sabah with Women for Women International. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And actually, I've been talking to other couples who have adopted from Pakistan and doing a bit of research for myself. And it seems that a lot of times you do actually have to have those connections in the country. And I've heard that sometimes people have to live there for 4 or 5 months to just, keep going back and forth between, the foundation. And it just seems that's kind of unfortunate that nowadays in our own environment in the U.S., with immigration and all of these regulations, it just seems to be getting more and more challenging. But I had a question about what you saw recently on your trip. Did you find that it was easier to adopt babies or like older children? And kids who are maybe toddlers?
Yeah. Babies are easy to adopt, and I would really encourage everyone to watch a documentary called These Birds Walk. So if you watch that, you'll realize one big problem, and the orphanage for older kids is called a home for missing and lost children. So infanticide is easy because an infant is easy to wrap up in plastic and thrown in trash, whereas an older child, it's hard unless you're Ibrahim and you're... But for those kids, they don't allow adoption because the foundation really tries to get them back home somehow. So that's why I recommended you guys watch that movie if you're interested in that, because these kids are abandoned. One kid was lied to. He was said, "Oh, we're going to a wedding, let's go." And then he was left in like a very far part of the city at a bus stop. The parents just bailed out on him. So, how can an organization give up such a kid who just came to them and saying, "I don't know where I live, I don't know how to read, there's no label on my home." And that movie documented exactly that. So it's hard to adopt older kids. Also, with older kids, a lot of couples are not interested in them because they do come with baggage. So you have to be ready for that. But I think love trumps all.
This question in the back, please. Thank you. Is the mic working? I don't think it is. We can't hear.
Hina Sharani from Impact International. I am also from Pakistan. So I sort of just had a question, something that I've always kind of wondered. So since you had an interaction with ED Foundation, who has been involved in adoption of children, so I was sort of wondering in your process, while you said there's maybe there's not like a set process, or at the time that when you did it there wasn't, but is there sort of a check or a background check that they sort of made you go through? Because there's so many cultural issues in Pakistan, and there is a high possibility that children could be adopted by people who would later subjugate them to child labor, abuse, drug abuse, molestation, prostitution. So I'm wondering if like these organizations, they're low on finances, and of course they would always want their children to get adopted. So is that a process they kind of go through? Are these checks and balances maybe which the government of Pakistan is taking under? Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't think government of Pakistan is doing anything, but they do, once they receive the application, they want the couples or the family to call them, to show them like determination, and to show up their faces, or to call them, or to send their family members to make sure that yes, we are willing to adopt. We are not just doing, like making a phone call now and after 6 months. So that's how they see, like, okay, this family is interested and real, but I don't think they do any background checks in that depth,
Yeah.
again, because of the resources they have or they do not have.
On this trip, I was made aware that Bilkis Edis is still the single owner of the decision. Is she gonna give a child to this couple, yes or no? And I remember 13 years ago, she told us, she said, you know, I'm glad that you guys live abroad, because every time we give a baby here, the baby is mocked, bullied, all sorts of issues come out if the baby finds out. But mostly people who adopt in Pakistan, they don't tell the baby ever. And it's not that they don't want to themselves, it's the culture thing. Because when Haris was about 6 or 7, we visited a family our family in Canada. Those 2 girls came back, all 3 of them were playing in the basement, and the 2 girls, the host family, the girls came up to the mother and whispered something. And then she looked at us and she goes, is Haris adopted? Because she said Haris told him that I'm adopted. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
So kids can spill the beans, right? So it's a big problem in Pakistan, but not international so much. So if someone is trying to adopt from here, I think they will have an easier time, but you have to prove that you're a Muslim and you're married to a spouse who's also Muslim, I think, right? Unless it has changed, I don't know.
But at least one of them has to be Pakistani and have a passport.
But you're right on all fronts. Even I've heard from both Maulana Abdul Sattar Edi and his wife that Saudis will take babies and use them as camel jockeys. Pakistanis will get kids and make them servants and all sorts of stuff.
We have time for 1 or 2 more questions. So let's take, oh boy, okay. No, you are a SCICE student. You
Don't
have
give
every
up.
right to ask a question. Huma, and then let's take really quick, we'll take these questions over here all at once. Go ahead.
Okay, so my question before I even asked, I think you answered a little bit of it already. I wanted to ask in terms of why don't we internationalize the taking of orphans from Pakistan? I know a lot of my friends here have been adopted, let's say, from Korea or other Asian countries, and that would actually improve the lives of the orphans in the sense of all the problems that you just reported, in the sense of them being bullied. So if you see an international couple adopting a Pakistani kid, and why aren't we advocating for that at all?
Okay, so hold your thought. Let's really quick, in the back, you had your hand up, ma'am, right? All right, so in the green jacket.
I just want to be the first one to say, my husband and I, we are their aunt and uncle, and they are our children. And I know that when they brought this baby home, I have watched the struggles. I watched the struggles when they couldn't have a baby. I watched the struggles from them learning to be parents, and they've turned into wonderful parents to him. He's a wonderful kid. And I think for Kashif and Faiza, you can do a lot of things with your money, but to do what these 2 have done to try to help other orphans in the world, I am very, very proud of you, and I love you very much.
Thank you. I love you too.
There were 2 more hands up here. Still, if you, we'll do that real quick, and then we'll come for closing points. Go ahead.
So you spoke a little bit about how photography for you is a way for you to like develop a close personal relationship with the people that you interview, like take pictures of. And I was just wondering, as someone like from a diaspora community or someone from like an external like privilege and like very cognizant of like your privilege and accessing these communities, how are you able to develop that sense of like personal anecdotes, like to get them out of like to get personal anecdotes out of people that you interview and to build trust in them, especially like when you're very aware of like the different power dynamic, I guess, that's like between you and those people that you're not necessarily a part of.
Okay. It was.
I just wanted to quickly admire how you're embrace your son and him knowing that he's adopting. My uncle actually adopted 2 kids from the Asian Foundation, and the older one's name is
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for any relationship, honesty is very important, especially with parents and kids. That's the first thing. So, okay, remember the international.
And I think, real quick,
yeah.
I think one idea that I try to explore sometimes is there are so many adopted kids in America and elsewhere, and it's one thing for parents to get together and eat Indian Pakistani food, but that's not really doing anything for the kids. So I wonder, how do we explore the idea of building a support system if one of them tomorrow is freaking out, so maybe something for the future to think about together.
That's an interesting question. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on the international adoptions, but I think there are a couple of issues that this panel is not designed to address, but that's probably one of them.
But that is something to really think about. That's a really good question.
It's a sea change. I mean, you're recommending a sea change. I mean, it would just say, boom, boom. You have this population here which is treated worse than street animals, right? So, and then here are couples looking to adopt. Just make it faster.
So she's a future policymaker. That's why she thinks like that. She's trying to solve the problem, which is wonderful. I think that's a good way to explore it.
And the photography question, if I still remember it correctly, I think as a photographer, one has to follow their own personality and be honest. If you're honest to yourself, so in my opinion, there are two types of photographers, right? One is who's only looking for a story. That kind of guy wants to tell his story. And I had to contemplate that a lot when I went there, because I personally have a very strong opinion about my culture and the religion, right? If I can bash it, I'll do it all day long. But I was like, no, as a photographer, I am responsible to report accurately. So if you start with that as your foundation and you talk to people, they will see your intention. I think we're animals and we have an instinct. We can gauge each other and realize if this person is BS liar or is he genuine? Is he really looking to understand, learn, and share my story with the world?
Kulsum and Faiza, any final words? Welcome to.
Actually, I would want to respond to the internationalization of adoption piece, because I think Nepal did that for a long time, where they had an agreement with, I think it was the US and a couple of other countries, to have fast processed adoptions taking place. And there were a lot of orphans from the war in Nepal that were benefiting from that. Unfortunately, what started happening was mass trafficking of children through that channel as well. And so what they did was they completely shut down adoptions from Nepal, which then basically meant that if you wanted to adopt, you had to go through like different routes. You could still do it, but it was like underhand.
You have to do everything on your own.
Exactly, and also like it was illegal, but you did it, and then the earthquake happened, and then there were even more children that were in need, but the laws haven't changed. So I think you have to look at the countries that are on both sides of this situation, and if they have the systems in place to allow for safe migration for children to happen. I don't know if Pakistan is in the situation right now where they have safeguarding and child protection policies in place where they would make sure that where the kids are going are safe places as well. So definitely something to think about, because it does benefit a lot of kids that are coming from China or coming from different parts of the world. But I think sometimes those countries are better equipped to deal with international adoption systems.
Thank you. Faiza?
Just spread love. That's all.
Thank you. On that note, thank you very much for sharing your story, and which is a very intensely personal one. And I hope we can continue the conversation. And thanks to all of you for coming and your great questions. We appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you.